Hi, everybody. Welcome to day one of week 3 of our unit Building Community. Before we begin the lesson, we're going to take some time to preview all of the moments for today's session, and teachers will provide some additional information for you on how to implement today's lesson. The first thing to note, teachers, is that below here in this section, you'll have your note for teachers. This is going to have some additional tips and suggestions of how to implement today. On the first slide, you're having a link to your teacher's guide, and we actually have that open, so taking a look, the teacher's guide applies to this unit and gives some additional information for each moment of the lesson of how you can work that out in your instruction. So after your introduction slide for the lesson, we're going to do the opening and do now activity, which will have a see, think, and wonder exercise. We'll also do a before reading activity, get a little preview for the text that students will read today and some work with vocabulary. Then we will have the into the text moment. Teachers, we're going to quickly walk you through what this will look like. On this slide, as you can see, you have a link here. This will take you to an audio recording of the text. So for students that benefit from listening as an additional support with reading, they can have this input with this audio file. And then here, you'll have a link to a PDF of the text that opens right up. And note you have your guiding questions to the right in these yellow boxes. These guiding questions are the moments while you're reading with your students where they can check for understanding and do some comprehension work as they're going through the text. And then as you go back to the slide, you'll see here on the gray box, there are the discussion questions. So these are to be used with the text as well. For students to process and discuss what it is that they learned. In the teacher's guide, specifically the into the text moment is described in more detail on slide number 9. So if you'd like some more information about the into the text moment, please refer to the teacher's guide down here on slide 9. After the into the text, you will do an after the reading activity. This is a moment for students to practice some note-taking with the different characters and people and quotes from the text to gather all that information in one place. Finally, you'll do a closing and connecting activity. Teachers, you can choose from these 4 options, whichever option would work best for you and your students to process and reflect on what you learned from today. So let's go ahead and get started with the lesson. Okay, so again, we are on day 1 of week 3, which is titled Our Community, and our unit, our very first unit, is Building Community. Our essential question for this week is, how can raising a voice strengthen our community? How can raising a voice strengthen, make stronger our community? The text you'll read today is entitled Mariposa, and the lesson objectives are here below in the pink box. So at this point, we'll ask if a student can read those lesson objectives out loud, and we'll pause this video and give students some time to read those to us. Okay, thank you for reading our lesson objectives. We have 2 for today. The first is to make logical inferences from the close reading of a text. So after we read our text closely and carefully, we're going to think about what it means to us and what we learned from it. The second lesson objective is to summarize key ideas and details in a text. So after we've thought about what we learned and what this text meant to us, we're going to give all of the most important information in our discussion afterwards. So let's move on to our opening and do now activity. So students, in our opening and do now, the procedure is that we look here at this image and we think to ourselves, what do you see? What do you think? And what do you wonder? It's going to all be about this image here on the right side. Teachers, you can have students respond in the chat, or you could create a separate Google Doc if you would like them to have some writing practice before, or they could also unmute and speak, whichever makes sense for them to, if they need to, have some prep time for their responses, or practice whichever modality you'd like them to express their ideas with. Students, as you're thinking about these questions, what do you see, think, and wonder? You have here below this green box. This could help you get started on your ideas. In the image, I see, I think that, and one thing I wonder is. before you start independently, let's do a quick example so you get a better idea of what this could look like. So here are the examples that I thought of. So in the image, I see a hand up. So I see this hand raised up. I think that the person wants to speak, right? So knowing that in a lot of places, raising your hand is asking permission to speak. So I think that this person here wants to speak. And one thing I wonder is what they will say. So if they're asking permission to speak, what is it that they want to say? So that's a quick example, students, for you to see the kind of ideas you can formulate and express. Again, please use here your box in green, your sentence starters, to begin your thoughts. And teachers, you can pause this video now, and students, you'll have some time to think about what you see, think, and wonder. When you start this video back up, we will begin the before the reading activity. Okay, thank you for participating. I hope you enjoyed your opening and do now activity. We're going to go into our before reading, which is going to give us a little bit of a preview of today's text. So when we do the before reading, we are reading these sentences. Again, these are from the text, and we are going to figure out which of the missing words here fits with each of these blanks for these sentences. I'm going to show you an example, and then students, you'll do this independently. Teachers, you could have students work independently, individually, or with partnerships, small groups, whole class, whichever you think would work best for your students. Let's do the first one together so you have an example of how we could think about this. The Latina students, blank, raised their hands, even those who were at the top of their class. So we know we have to fill in the blank here about these students raising their hands, and we have our options here at the right. And you'll notice that each of these are links, and students, if you need to find out what the words mean, you can click through to these links, and it will actually take you to a dictionary definition for each of the words. So returning to the slide, we're going to think again about this first one, the students raising their hands, and what word is going to describe that. So even those who are at the top of their class, I'm looking here at my different options, different, participation, rarely, risks, voices. And if I'm thinking back to my action raising their hands, I feel like the word rarely fits best because it's something to describe an action. If you do something rarely, it means you almost never do it, you do not do it a lot. So I might use that to apply to this first sentence because it's the action of raising their hands. So what we'll do here is we'll just insert that word. The Latina students rarely raised their hands, even those who were at the top of their class. So they did not raise their hands that much. Again, taking the word here from our bank of vocabulary. So now that we've seen an example, students, you will do this yourselves. We'll pause this video, give you a chance to continue the before reading activity. Teachers, you could also make copies of the slide and have students work on those, deleting the blanks and just typing in the word from the word bank. So go ahead and give the before reading activity a try. When you come back, we'll set the purpose and get ready to go into the text. Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your before reading activity. Before we go into the text, let's set the purpose for today. The purpose is always going to be here in our orange box. Today we are going to begin reading a text about a person who is helping to raise other people's voices. Let's read to identify who she is and what her program aims to do. So thinking about that purpose, we're reading about a person, and she's helping to raise other people's voices, which she's helping people to speak up for themselves. She's helping people to tell their stories and to be able to express who they are. So she's raising their voices. So that's what we're going to think about as we're reading today's text. We're going to think about who she is and what exactly her program does to raise people's voices and let them be heard and express themselves. We have academic vocabulary here in the gray box. Our first word is belonging. If we click on that, it also gives us our dictionary definition. So belonging is a sense of fitting in or feeling like you are an important member of a group. So belonging is when you feel important in a group. Going back to our second vocabulary, struggle. Something that can only be accomplished with great effort is said to be a struggle. So a struggle is something that you can only do with a lot of effort. It's not something simple. It's something that is challenging and difficult. Struggle. So we have our academic vocabulary, belonging, and struggle to think about as we read. So teachers, at this point, you can go into the text with your students, and afterwards you will have your after the reading activity and your closing and connecting. So thanks so much, and we will see you for day 2.